What is up, guys? Back in the garage. It is a beautiful Sunday morning at about 7 a.m. Last year I would have been on a bike probably 20 minutes from now, ripping around. Let me close the garage actually. As much as I would love to be out riding and having a good time today, we got work to do. So transmission is pretty much all set and ready to go back together. We have valve body that just needs to get bolted in, so I'm going to finalize this little spring that I was looking at. I think in the last video I touched on it briefly. This actually locks into this groove on the separator plate, so we got to get this put back together. Then we need to figure out the shifter things. So I have the other motor and trans on the ground here, all of which needs to start coming apart. Top end of this needs to come off completely, and the front dress timing cover stuff needs to come off. And what else? We got front timing cover, intake manifold heads all need to come off because we want to go fast, right? Which means trick flow stage 1 cam and heads over here need to get cleaned up and prepped to be bolted back onto this motor. And then the transmission and starter need to come off of this completely because this transmission we've been working on needs to get attached to that motor. Lots and lots to do. I don't know exactly. I got a buddy of mine in from, he was in California, now he's in Utah, but he's in from Utah. I think he's going to swing by a little bit later on today. And I never get to see him, so I'm not sure how long that'll go. He might help wrench around and maybe get this motor in, but realistically, if I can get everything prepped to just drop the motor in, that's kind of what we're going for today. I still need to make headers, well, find a set of headers that will work. I have a wall of headers at the shop. Most of those do not actually fit directly. The black ones that I have fits on the passenger side maybe, but the angle on it, it's set up for a 302 with the C4. AOD is a little bit bigger and it doesn't fit, so we're gonna have some cutting and welding to do on that. I'm gonna reuse the torque converter, and I need to rebuild the TV cable linkage because this cable has definitely seen better days. What else? Other than that, I mean, a lot of disassembly today, so we're gonna get jamming on this. I'm not sure if I'm gonna finish putting the trans together first. I feel like that would be a smart move. Finish one thing before taking apart more things. That's the logical thing that most people do. But I need parts off of that to finalize this transmission anyway, so kind of bouncing back and forth. All I really got to do is throw the valve body on for this. Once the valve body's on with the little roller detent clip, then the trans pan can go on, which I don't have all the bolts for. Need to steal them from the other one. And then I can figure out the shifter linkage situation. So let's start with the transmission. It seems a little bit easier. Then I have an extra motor stand, one of those up at the shop. I just don't really feel like going over and getting it if I don't have to. If I can sit down on the bench and just yank the heads and stuff off here. Looking at everything now, yeah, let's put the valve body back on. Onto the valve body. Move some stuff here. Everything is pretty much laid out. I just grabbed a wrench and made sure that the shifter mechanism nut is tight. So that's good to go. Now it's just a matter of lining up the valve body onto the base case of the trans. So we're going to kind of set this in. And then I'm going to try and throw a couple bolts in here. You got your long and short bolts. I know I went over that in the other video, but now I'm forgetting. Short bolt, long bolt. They all have a place I vaguely remember, so we're going to kind of just dive into this. But I'll throw the long bolts in first. And maybe I'll just lay all these out. Short ones are going to go on the side. You can keep them separated. It's probably a smart idea if you don't want to have to think about it. But if we look at this short bolt here, the thread lengths are about the same going into the case now. If I run a long one here, it's going to look really long. And you won't be able to tighten this down all the way because you'll bottom out the threads. That's way too much thread sticking out past there. So it's pretty straightforward. It's not overly complicated in that regard. But we'll get a couple of these laid out just so we can short one over here. Just so we can get this to kind of line it back up into the motor. I just want to get 3 bolts in before I put the gasket back in, because then we can actually tighten this down into the case and kind of keep it where it's supposed to be, so it's not wandering around all over the place. Just like that, like that. One in the bottom's probably not a bad idea either. Come on. Catch. Just get a couple threads started at each one. Now this is where it gets a little tricky. Let me get this seated first. If I can get this just to grab a couple threads, just to engage. I don't want it to slide or fall off on me. Just by hand, I don't need to go too crazy here yet. These aren't getting final torqued, and I already have an issue that I gotta explain because this is the important part. Okay. Right now, valve body's getting stuck because this section right here, this little lever, is behind the TV cable spring, which is exactly what you don't want. So I gotta free those up before we can do anything else. Pry that in like that. That's where you want that, and now the valve body's free to kind of move around. It should be. Let's see. Alright, so now we got that kind of snugged up. Then we'll just kind of lay out the rest of these bolts here. Let me grab the hardware from the ground, throw them all in. And then... Okay, I laid everything out. So the short ones, here, here, here. So 3 here, 4. And 4. So you got 4 here, 3 here, that's 7, and then the 8th one goes right here. The rest of them should be long, and if you actually look at the valve body, it's not that complicated. This is higher than, well, this boss on these lower ones are higher, these upper ones are higher. The side is really where that's going to kind of shrink down. You can see it there. That's your distance there compared to the middle of it, where it sits above the valves. So we'll just rip these down real quick. Not final torque or anything. Oh, and then the only other important part is this little shifter detent. It's got a little spring and a roller on it. This roller is what engages your gears. If you look, there's a forked end. That goes onto the longer bolt when I was putting the valve body back together. So this will end up sitting kind of like this. Let's start with that one. Just like that. And that's your actual shifter engagement arm. So that's what you get to feel whenever you're shifting the gears. I do need to double check that because that doesn't look like it's engaging all the way. But let's drop this. So on the valve body, I'll start in the inside. Work your way out. so everything's kind of roughly snugged up. I'm going to put a 1/4-inch wrench on here and just make sure everything is torqued down proper. I'm sure there is an actual sequence on there. I don't care enough. If I have problems with it because of that, I'll let you know. I'm not opposed to... Oh, let's see what I did here. Hopefully I can get to this. This shifter needs to engage in this pin. Let me do that real quick. How am I going to do that? Foolish. Got ahead of myself. When you put the valve body on, this little groove needs to line up on this pin. I didn't do that. So how can I do this now? Crap, I might have to loosen these up. Way to get ahead of myself again. Since I messed up, I loosened all of these. I pulled the top screws all the way out. These ones are kind of half loose just so I have enough room to pivot this. But now, this was hitting right here. So the shifter linkage arm was hitting on this pin, which is where it needs to engage. But I have enough room to pivot this out. So now if we line these up, that's in the groove where it's supposed to be. Then we'll put all these bolts back in, re-zip them down again, making sure we got the long ones on the high spots, like so. Then I'll do the retorque-ish, or the re-snug down, and then I'll come back for a final torque here a little bit later, because you already saw me do this. So same thing, rip, rip, rip. Alright, I redid that twice because it was so much fun. Now, when you click this through the gears, we get park is all the way forward, reverse, neutral, second, first. Oh, I missed OD. So right now we're in first, second, overdrive, neutral, reverse, park. Shifting proper. That's being optimistic of me. Not that anything in here could ever be messed up with me drilling holes and not having a clue what I'm doing. Let me grab a 1/4-inch. I'm going to re-snug all of these down. Equal pressure on all of them. It's not a high torque value. These are only 8mm heads, so don't go hulking these down, but let me just make sure everything's evenly torqued since I don't really trust the electric ratchet for that one. Valve body is completely torqued down now. Everything's good. I just went over everything with a quarter-inch drive. Don't go crazy with a 3/8. You will break them. They're very small, and there's so many of them the torque value is not very high. There's 24, 28 bolts or something. So make sure you just get all of them. Start on the inside, work your way out, or be smarter than me and look up the torque spec. Use a little 1/4-inch wrench and a torque gauge, or torque wrench rather. Make sure they're all proper. I'm confident with this. But we'll find out when we put it back together. My bigger concern's all the holes that are in the valve body, obviously. We're pretty much ready to put the gasket on. I'm gonna grab a razor and scrape the edge of this, get some of the corrosion and crap off of here. Get that cleaned up. Then the freshly powder coated oil pan will go on here, like so. With I think I got a cork gasket, unfortunately. It had a cork gasket on it. So I'll reuse not reuse the gasket, but use another cork one. I really like those blue gaskets, but they are a lot more expensive. The one-piece oil pan type material. Blue silicone, rubber, whatever they are, reusable. I prefer those, but on this, that's kind of what we got. Obviously, the shifter up here is going to have to get readjusted. This is pitched at a really weird forward angle, but it's clockable. So all of these screws on the bottom, and then this stock TV lever. This is your TV pressure valve. Oh, yeah, there's no trans fluid in here, so it's a little notchy, but it's metal on here, so it's going. It's still smooth, it's still working. Should be okay on that. And we have a much stiffer spring there, so this TV valve arm is not the one we're going to use. I need the Lokar one off of that transmission, and we'll have to clock that. This bolt is what holds it up and down, and then there's a special Lokar bolt that goes in there as well. I bought a C4 cable, which is non-TV valve, kick down cable if you will, but I have the other cable, so I need the internal from the C4 one, rig that up to this, and we're gonna make it all work. It's just a through bolt adjustment up on the top side, so rather than spend another $120 or $127 is what I think Lokar charges for that stupid cable, I have all the stuff. All my important parts are good. It's the sheathing and the cable that are messed up, so I'm hoping to take a $13 C4 cable from inside that my buddy Jeff Bezos sent me and try and retrofit that to the brackets and the linkages. Could work, might not, I have no idea, but I'm way too cheap to spend a ton of money on another cable that is gonna crap out on me. That one's only a year old. So that's pretty much it on the transmission for now. I think we're gonna move on over to this motor and transmission and get these separated. On the valve body, I came over, I grabbed the old TV cable and set this up. This is the expensive Lokar parts. You get this little bracket that goes on this lever and a fancy machined nut. I'll show you what this looks like. This is the Lokar TV cable kit. Then you get your spring over here. So this is like a sleeved nut that goes in through here, and then at the bottom of this, it's got a squared keyway to go onto here. So I'm going to loosely slap all this together. All of this is going to need final adjustment, which I would kind of like to have semi-set before. And if you see right there, when I put this on, it actually dropped this shaft down. That's what you got to be real careful of, because this will get pinched in between the case and the actual TV adjuster. Got to make sure that that stays up there like so. I'm going to loosely set this because this shifter lever orientation is absolutely wrong right now. Typically you run them 180 out, so I'll have the shifter face down here using these three, so it's like straight down. But I should have a lot more wiggle room in regards to how that's going to work. And then when you hit your accelerator, TV lever pulls forward like that, pushes on the valve like so, springs back like it's supposed to. And then the last part we got to go over real quick. Let me set you guys up on the tripod real quick. Is down here, this TV spring right here. What's the best way to show you guys this? This is the important part that you don't want to mess up. This spring right here, you can see the bottom side of it. I gotta hook this and spring that over into this groove right here. Focus, right there. So let me slap that on there, and then I'll show you guys in detail what it looks like when it's all done, because I don't know how much of this you're going to see. Tight quarters. So I'm just going to get in here with a pick on the spring. There we go. Just like that. So now the spring is locked in here, and the valve constantly has pressure to return. So it'll always kind of keep tension right on this valve here. So anytime it's returning, it snaps back to where it should, under load, maintains pressure there, and returns in and out. Locks through the gears nicely, just like it's supposed to. I can't hit first right now because of the location of this, which is why that shifter is going to have to move. And that's pretty much that. On this trans, like I said, we'll grab the converter out, figure out what I'm going to do, and then I can set the oil pan on now after I do the filter. So I think we're going to finish up this video with filter install, get this locked down. I'll clean everything up on the trans pan and essentially just get all of this laid out. Put the pan back on, have this transmission pretty much done. I'm trying to figure out on the motor side. I'd like to grab an engine stand. I have an extra one at the shop. Put it up there, but at the same time, it's just a top end. I don't mind being on the ground doing that, but it's going to be much easier to do the top end if the torque converter and trans are reinstalled. Then I just lose some of the adjustability in terms of trying to rotate the thing over. Since we are taking off the entire front dress and everything else, it might just be easier on the stand, but then I got to drive to the shop. Not a big deal. Or I can pull one of these out and drop one of these on the ground and flip-flop them. But then I got to move bikes, and I got a transmission and a motor and a cherry picker and all that. Not enough room. Maybe it's easier to drive to the shop. We'll figure that one out, but let's button up the transmission for the rest of this video. I'll at least have this done and get this back on the ground. Or maybe it'll stay on the bench until we're ready. So time to start cleaning. Gasket mating surface is all wiped down, cleaned up. We need to throw this filter back on. So in order to do that, got a couple bits here. Got a brand new filter when I ordered the Baumann kit. This came with it. Filter, gasket, and then your O-ring. So I'm going to splash this with a little trans fluid on the O-ring. Get that kind of laid out for an easy slip fit. Then this is going to slide on here like so. I didn't forget the gasket, but I'm going to snake this in underneath. I need to find my trans filter bolts, more 8 mils. 4 of them, I believe. 3 of them. And this will go right here. Come on, bolt. Better idea. While this is all cleaned up, I'm going to gasket glue this right onto there. Only on the trans side, and I'm not going to use a lot. Don't need a ton here, just enough to kind of tack it into place. Right, I'm going to give this a minute to set up so this holds right where it's supposed to. Just like that. We'll be back in a minute. I gave that filter a second to set up, so this gasket's pretty much stuck where it needs to be. Put the O-ring on first. Line this up, gentle, gentle. And there we go. Now we got 3 little bolts. Again, small 8 mil heads. Don't need to hulk this down at all. We'll get these kind of started. There we have it. Our tranny is done and ready to throw the oil pan on. And that wraps up the transmission side, other than the oil pan. Here's the deal on the oil pan. I got a brand new cork gasket sitting over here, so I'm gonna grab that. And I need some of the hardware. I do not have all of the bolts. It's a new gasket. So I'll set this out here. I'm gonna gasket glue this to the pan. I'm gonna try this without silicone, if I can avoid it, but I never actually know. I'm not the biggest fan of the felt gaskets, or the cork gaskets. I need some of the bolts, and I need the shifter bracket off of the other transmission. I don't know how I want to do that yet without making a giant mess. Once I start pulling things out, that trans is going to spill everywhere. So right now my tentative thought is I'm going to get this laid out with some of the hardware that I have. Gasket glue this to the pan so that'll slide right on, and then start going through. I might actually clean up some of these threads too on the case. Yeah, I'm going to start with that just to make my life easy. I don't think there's any that are that bad, but I'd like to just run a thread chaser through those real quick while the gasket sets up on the oil pan. So I'll glue that to there, thread chase these, and then we'll go through the hardware that I got sitting here on the bench underneath all the drills and stuff, and start snugging that down. Then we'll worry about the shifter bracket later. Now let me start chasing some threads. Just kidding. Gasket glue. But essentially, we are going to line this thing up all along the pan. This is not RTV, this is not silicone, this is strictly just an adhesive for gaskets. So this will set up and it dries hard, but if it stays in the motor, it's not going to, or in the trans, it's not going to clog up passages or ruin your day like silicone will. If any big chunks fall off. Extra on the corners. And we'll kind of line up the gasket as well. So I got a ton of this on the pan. We're just going to hit the corners on the gasket itself because the glue's already on there. Thought I had more of this. We're running low. Maybe I got a new one. I feel like I've been pretty good about staying up on overstocking that lately. Set this up here. And then this corner where it bends, I'm going to load this side up. Get the other corner. So we'll just do a little glob right here, both sides, tack it up. Then this can set up while we go back and chase the threads on the trans case itself. Just kind of pressuring this down. Make sure all the bolt holes line up exact where you want them. Just like that. We'll let this dry for a little bit. I've talked about these thread chase kits a ton. I use these all the time. So we're just doing the metric threads here. Not going crazy. 7/16 there. Just using a drill. So these threads are in pretty good shape. I just want to make sure everything's good. So I'm doing one quick pass just to clean everything up on here. There's nothing worse than getting through this and then realizing you stripped out a bolt or you had a crusty thread that messed up your day. So quick little precautionary. Takes about 2 minutes to get through all of these. We do have one boogered up one right here, which is why we do this. So I'm going to come back to that one in a minute. Then this top one definitely needs a little bit of work. The outer thread, you can see it's rolled over right there. So this one I'm actually going to do by hand. Oh, I broke it free just by hand. All right. Good. Threads are cleaned up. We're ready to bolt the oil pan on. Pan is gasket glued. Ready to go on. So we'll take our pan gently. The gasket's kind of glued in place, but it's not going to be completely locked in yet. Get one bolt up top. Start with that front, or let me turn this around. Start with this top edge right there. Lay this on gently. Got 10 mil heads on these. Maybe it's like an M8. They are metric. Do not mess that up if you go to rechase any of these metric threads. If you didn't know, we did a good job telling you. I don't know if that's going to show up. Metric! Which means, find your 10 mils. I'm just going to loose set these bolts in. We're not going to do a final snug on these. Get them on, get them started, because I definitely don't have all of them like I need. Actually, you know what? I will have enough bolts. I'm missing, hopefully 2. If I'm missing 2, I'm perfectly fine. If I'm missing more than 2, then I definitely need to steal one from the other kit, but I do have the 2 that are going to go on this side for the shifter. So we're all good on the bottom, good here. I'll flip-flop these two. This one can come over here. And that is all of the bolts I need. There's two long ones on the other transmission that are going to go through the shifter cable bracket. There we have it. The transmission is put back together. We're going to have to get rid of this TV cable bracket. That's where the other mount's going to go for the new TV cable. So this is going to get mounted here, like so. That one will go on here, probably up top. I think that's how we had it on the other one. Stock bracket's going to go away. Then we need to switch over some oil lines, some oil pressure stuff from the other transmission. But we can deal with that later. As of right now, this trans should be pretty much ready to go back in. Can't forget this spring. I'm telling you this so I remember when I edit. That spring's gonna have to go back in, and then we'll switch over the motor mount stuff, or the transmission mounts for the rear cross member. Basically flip-flop everything on there. I think I busted one of the oil lines, so we're gonna have to replace one oil line. I think the other one's good. We'll rebuild those from scratch, so that's gonna happen in the car. But there we have it. That's the transmission put back together, not fully assembled since we got some flip-flopping to do. But shift kit is installed, linkage is all hooked up, and the oil pan is back on. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all those fun things. I'm going to split this into two parts. Same day, but different videos. So there's the transmission stuff. Finally done. Fingers crossed it shifts okay and everything is working proper. If not, got a lot of learning to do on transmissions, and I have another valve body, so we can try again. Motor's coming up next, so we'll be doing the heads, top end, intake. I don't know what intake I'm running yet, so at least we'll try and get those trick flow heads and the cam and everything installed on this. Got a bunch of parts, bunch of gaskets, bunch of materials for that. I need to double check I have silicone. I think that's the only thing I need to run out to the store and grab for the intake, but I don't know if we're even putting the intake on. So thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Lots more Ford stuff coming your way, because this Falcon needs to get running and driving again. Catch you on the next one.